This episode of the Experimental Brewing Podcast is brought to you by Pico Brew, makers of the Zymatic and Pico brewing systems. The brewing systems of the future are here now. Discover how easy and rewarding it is to make great beer with Pico Brew.
And by Craftmeister and BTF Iota 4. When you absolutely positively need to make sure every surface is clean, bust out the cleaner with professional power and homebrewer safety. Make better beer with better chemistry. Choose Craftmeister. And by NicoBrew.com. NicoBrew.com is your one-stop hop shop where Nico and his guild take care of all your hop needs with nitrogen flush mylar and only $5 to ship anywhere in the US, and with great international rates. If you're a pro brewer or a homebrew shop owner, get a commercial account at pro.nicobrew.com to take full advantage of Nico and his guild.
And by the American Homebrewers Association, a community of more than 46,000 beer lovers. Since 1978, the AHA and its members have worked to promote the best hobby there is, homebrewing. Join us today for 6 issues of Zymergy magazine, money-saving AHA member deals, and access to exclusive events and competitions. And remember, relax, don't worry, have a homebrew.
Y Yeast Laboratories has provided fresh, premium liquid yeast cultures worldwide since 1986. Choose from our product collection of ale, lager, German wheat, Belgian ale, wine, malolactic, or wild and sour strains for your next fermentation creation. We're here to help you ferment premium products like the professional, Y Yeast.
And by you, our listeners. Go to experimentalbrew.com to help support us. Click on the Patreon link to donate whatever amount you like to the podcast and our charities. Click on the Brew Your Own magazine link to subscribe to BYO, or click on the AHA link to join the American Homebrewers Association. Part of the proceeds from those will go to help support the podcast. And thanks for your support. Hello, welcome to Experimental Brewing with Denny and Drew. I'm Denny Kahn.
And I'm Drew Beecham. Together, we're the authors of Experimental Homebrewing, Mad Science in the Pursuit of Great Beer, and a recent hit book that's sweeping the nation, Homebrew All-Stars. Between the two of us, we have nearly 40 years of homebrewing experience. Now, I'm the guy known for weird beer and strange ideas.
And I'm the guy who's known for questioning the conventional wisdom and coming up with ways to check it out.
All right, on today's episode, we're going to head to the pub to discuss the beer life. We're actually getting back to our regular format, folks. Almost, not entirely, but hey, we're almost there. And then it's off to the lounge where we talk to Kevin and Shay England, the duo behind San Francisco's newest homebrew store/brewery, Ferment, Drink, Repeat.
Wow, those guys have set themselves up for a lot of work there. And finally, we're going to hit you up with another round of Ask Denny and Drew before we finally close out the show with our quick tip of the week. Before we get into all that, we want to remind you of a few ways you can support the podcast. You can go to our website, experimentalbrew.com, and you can click on the AHA link to join the American Homebrewers Association and receive Zymergy magazine. You can click on the Brew Your Own link to subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine. When you do either one of those through our website, we get a little bit of money from that, and that helps to support the podcast and our charity. Now, what charity, you say? We had just finished up a really successful fund drive for Freedom Service Dogs, and we are moving on to a new charity. The charity for the second half of the year comes at the suggestion of our Igor Robert Holloway, the Children's Tumor Foundation. We checked out the rating. This looks like a really good place. The foundation supports research into the causes and treatment of pediatric oh boy, I thought I could say that. Neurofibromatosis. Pediatric neurofibromatosis. So, again, I think that we have a real winner here, an organization doing some great work that can use some help, huh?
Yeah, it's dogs and children, puppies of all sorts. They all need our help.
That's right. And so please go to the website, click on the Patreon link, contribute whatever you feel like, and we will get a nice donation off to the Children's Tumor Foundation.
Yeah, and just to give you guys an idea, I mean, Denny, you just heard back, from Freedom Service Dogs, right?
Right, yeah. They left a message on my phone. I've been trying to get back to talk to them, but the donation that you guys all made out there was highly appreciated and highly useful for them. So thanks to all of our listeners for kicking in for that, and let's keep it going now with the Children's Tumor Foundation.
Ramen.
Indeed. So I guess it's time to head off to the pub and talk about the beer life, huh?
I think so.
All right, I'll meet you there. Never wait for fruit to be in season again. With Vintner's Harvest fruit purees and wine bases, you can enjoy consistent quality fruit which was picked at the peak of ripeness. F.H. Steinbart Company, the nation's oldest homebrew store, recommends grapefruit or tart cherry purees for your next sour or wild beer. So make sure to ask for them at your local homebrew supply store where Brewcraft USA products are sold. And remember, not all fruit purees are equal. If it's not in a Vintner's Harvest can, it's not the same. Okie dokie, beer fans. Drew and I are sitting here in the pub having a couple beers. I am drinking the Eagle Harbor IPA from Bainbridge Island Brewing. I was up in the Seattle area and on Bainbridge Island a couple weeks ago and brought back a growler. Wonderful beer. About as crystal clear as any beer you will ever see in your life. And we're going to have an interview with the brewmaster and owner there, Russell Everett, coming up in the next couple shows. So what are you having today, Drew?
Well, I got to go to Eagle Rock Brewing Company, which of course is my local brewery, this past weekend, and got to hang out with Jason Petros, a.k.a. JP, a.k.a. the Brewing Network. And while we were hanging out there doing some beer, the Eagle Rock folks were kind enough to gift us a couple of bottles of their brand new beer that hasn't been released yet, called Jägermeister, which is a sour blonde ale aged in wood with pluots and mangoes. And it's named after the guy who invented the pluot.
And the pluot is a cross between a plum and what?
And an apricot.
Oh, yeah, sure, of course. Wow, I can't say I've ever had one, but it sounds delicious.
They are very delicious. I still just want to know what the hell was going through his head when he said, you know what would be a really great idea? Let's blend a plum and an apricot.
Yeah, right. Well, kind of like the first guy to eat an oyster, you know? Who the hell thought of that? I guess the topic today is we are back to more brewery sales and... I know we said we weren't going to talk about this anymore, but hey, it's been months, so I think that people have forgotten we promised that.
One of them hits close to you this time.
Yeah, that's true. I'm in the Eugene, Oregon area. We have a brewery here called Hop Valley. It's been around for, maybe 8-10 years. Started by a former home brewer by the name of Trevor Howard and his father and a couple other investors. Started out in a former brew pub location, kind of northeast of Eugene. Did pretty well there and built another facility down in what we call the fermentation district, where we close to downtown Eugene. We have a lot of breweries and distilleries and wineries set up. And just going great guns, huge brewing system, and all along they have kind of appeared to be set for acquisition. You know, they were like it appeared as if they were trying to get big so that they would be an attractive target for someone, and it just happened this week. 10th and Blake, which is the craft beer wing of Miller Coors, bought a majority interest in Hop Valley. And there's a lot of talk around town about it. The local paper released some statements from local brewery owners, one of whom said, oh, no, this is not a good thing. And the other one who said, well, I'm real happy for the owners and the money that they got. So I guess those are the two sides of the issue there. But it's happened. It's struck close to home. And the other one that 10th and Blake has acquired this week is Terrapin, right?
Yeah, so Terrapin down in Athens, Georgia, I think. Definitely Georgia. Well, it kind of been a stalwart of the Georgia beer scene for a long, long time. And years ago, they had entered into like a 25% ownership agreement with 10th and Blake. And at the time it was like, oh, look, this is just so that we can get the money so we can expand, so blah, 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 blah. Beer won't change, quality won't change, we're still in charge. The usual song and dance. And now, of course, last week, 10th and Blake announced that they had acquired the whole company, lock, stock, and barrel. So one of the things I think is interesting is I suspect we're going to see more of this particular pattern, with the kind of the Terrapin buyout, because I think Terrapin was absolutely dead silent on all their social media, all their channels out into the world about the acquisition, and it basically leaked out from the 10th and Blake side. And part of me wonders if this sort of like gradual partial acquisition followed by a full acquisition isn't a sort of a pattern that we'll see as a way of softening the blow, to make it so that craft beer drinkers don't get like as head up about the fact that somebody big is buying their local brewery, right? Oh, well, no, I can totally buy it. It's just it's investment, and they're using it to make the beer better. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the worries about the Hop Valley thing. Right now, 10th and Blake bought a majority interest, but does it mean that they will go ahead and eventually end up having the whole ball of wax? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I do find it interesting because, Eugene is not a huge beer market. So it's hard to say what kind of backlash or effect it would really have if they did. But,
yeah, but I mean, it seems to be the power play at the moment is for these big breweries, which of course now these two breweries are looking like they're going to become one brewery.
Right.
With the DOJ effectively approving the deal for the merger between Anheuser-Busch InBev and Miller Coors, with lots of restrictions attached to it, but still, they're on track for becoming one company now. And you talked about, okay, so what sort of changes might end up happening in the company, and we've seen the script that happens every time one of these things, one of these sales happens, where look, obviously the big companies are trying to get regional players so that they can build regional brand loyalty type things, which is the reason to go for like a Hop Valley or a 10 Barrel. But, every time they do it, they trot out the same line. Oh, the beer's not going to change. We're still in charge. We still have the vision, et cetera, et cetera. And we saw that with everybody's favorite maker of multiple flavors of fruited IPAs, Ballast Point, who last year got bought for the sparkling amount of money of $1 billion by Constellation Brands, a.k.a. Corona. And, they trotted out the same company line back then. Well, now it turns out in the past week, at the same time that 10th and Blake was announcing all these acquisitions, that 5 of the top officers of Ballast Point, including the founder and the head brewer, have all left the company now.
That's very interesting, and I haven't heard anything about whose idea it was that they leave, Well, you understand what I'm saying here?
Well, I mean, it looks like at least the couple of the other head executives, the ones that were first announced, those all looked like they were part of planned transitions, right? It's like, okay, great, you guys have helped shepherd us through this merger and initial growth phase. Now get the hell out of here. The other one with the founder and head brewer, Jack and Yusuf, it looks like part of their deal had been originally that they sold the brewery, but they didn't sell the distilling operations, and they had an agreement from Constellation Brands to allow them to set up a separate distilling company. I think it's called Cutthroat Spirits. And the information that I saw coming out online over the weekend was basically Constellation felt like their new distilling pursuits were a distraction from the company, and so therefore effectively told them to knock it off or leave. And so you can imagine what you can do
so
if you
left.
haven't. Well, I mean, look, if you've just gotten a sale for $1 billion, that's a whole lot of FU money. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's like why are you working anyway?
Yeah. So There we go. For all those times that you see that line trotted out, that nothing's going to change, the beer quality will improve, we'll have access to better tools and whatnot. Just remember what happened with Ballast Point here this past week, and I don't know. Again, I love Sculpin. I loved Sculpin back in the days before it became grapefruit Sculpin, pineapple Sculpin, habanero Sculpin, watermelon Sculpin, watermelon this. What random fruit can we find on the produce shelf? But at the same time, I'm not entirely surprised by this.
Yeah, right. It's one of those things where you can kind of see it coming, and especially with the money that these guys have received, it's like, okay, screw you, I'm gone. Okay, so with that cheery news out of the way, we're gonna take our beers and we're gonna head over to the lounge, and we're gonna check out Drew's conversation with Kevin and Shay England of Ferment, Drink, Repeat in San Francisco. Well, here we are in the lounge, sitting in these comfy chairs with our beers, no cigars today, and we're going to check out the results of Drew's trip to San Francisco.
Yeah, so I got a chance to travel for work, because naturally that's what we do. And of course, if I'm going to go to work someplace, then I'm also going to go check out beer things. And Kevin England, who is the co-founder of Ferment, Drink, Repeat, actually kind of made a little bit of a splash in the news about, I think, a year or two ago when he did his Kickstarter for the brewery. And originally it was going to be a nano brewery with a homebrew shop attached to it. And now it's become like a full-fledged brew, still with a homebrew shop attached to it. And they have an absolutely awesome space that's all going to be designed around education and exploration and getting people to, really dig into the beer. And they're also in a really, really cool location, kind of about as far outside the city of San Francisco as you can get. So I got a chance to sit down with Kevin and his lovely wife, Shay, and we had a little bit of a conversation about what it takes to open up a homebrew shop / brewery and what they were hoping to see. Now, when I recorded this segment, it was before they were officially open, but they are now officially open. So if you are in that area, you should definitely go check out Ferment, Drink, Repeat.
So I'm Kevin England, and my wife Shay and I are opening this homebrew shop and a small brewery in San Francisco. And we're happy to be part of the show. Thanks for inviting us.
Well, thank you for taking the time. So, real quick, the whole concept here, Ferment, Drink, Repeat, and you guys have been, if I remember correctly, it's been about 2 years in planning, right, and getting ready to open?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, from business plan, initial thoughts, it's probably 3 years, but then we've been renting the space here for a couple of years. Excuse me. More than 2 years ago, we had a crowdfunding campaign through Crowd Brewed, which was coincided with the SF Beer Week of 2014. And being naive like I was, and Shay was telling me better of it, but I thought we would have been open, a long time ago. But we just got our first beers brewed in the last 2 weeks, and so we're looking at a May-June opening here, or late May opening, so it's been a process.
Well, I was going to say, we passed by the tanks as they were doing their bubble.
Right.
So that's kind of always nice to see.
Yep.
But now, even though the brewery itself isn't open yet, you guys have a little homebrew shop open.
We do. Yeah.
Yeah, so we opened that on St. Patrick's Day of this year, and it's been an interesting ride because we have all this other stuff going on. So we have our homebrew shop open for limited hours, and but people seem to really enjoy where we're located because there's really not a lot between Los Altos and
Other part of the city.
the other part of the city. There's another homebrew shop out in the Richmond. So we're sort of in between the two of those. And so because of that, people have found us and found us to be closer than many other homebrew shops that are available to them.
Right. And I was going to say, just for our listeners who don't know San Francisco geography, and I barely know any of it because, after all, I live in Los Angeles, the antithesis of San Francisco in some ways. we are south of what everybody thinks of as San Francisco, right? This is what, San Bruno?
No, well, we're actually in San Francisco. It's confusing because there was a San Bruno south of here, but we're on San Bruno Avenue.
Ah, okay.
And we're literally on the border of the city, and the next city south of here is called South San Francisco. So it's provided some confusion, but we're technically in the city limits of San Francisco.
But you're basically about as far south as you can get in the city without...
Quite nearly.
Right.
And we're right as where 101 and 280 meet, so we're convenient like to the highways coming through the city as well. So we're on the south edge of San Francisco proper, not South San Francisco.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, and it's real super convenient if you're coming from the airport and you need to stop to get your fermentation supplies before you go to your hotel.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, it is. So we up here we say the peninsula, and that's just the point south of us down that stretch of land that goes down to San Jose, basically, and we're pretty convenient to those people on the peninsula because they can get on 101 or 280 and be here in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, so it's pretty good. And they don't have to actually get into the heart and the traffic and the annoying parts of the city. We're kind of on the fringe, so it's working out well. We've had a lot of positive response from people who are excited to have another shop to come to.
So it's always good to have your options, right?
Yep.
And so, I mean, and it seems like having the homebrew store, gives you guys the opportunity to build up community presence before the brewery itself actually is fully online in a way.
Yeah, and another thing that I think is really convenient is once we do have the brewery open, they can come and shop for their home brew supplies and also have a beer at the tap room. So that's unique to us than any other home brew shop kind of in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I don't know any other brewery homebrew shop combo. So, I think people will find that to be, it provides them more of an experience. They come, they shop, they lollygag and have a beer. So, or people will find interest in homebrewing. They'll come and have a beer and go, oh, you have a homebrew shop. So it might spark interest in the other direction as well.
Oh, yeah, I mean, in some ways it's kind of an older school model, like you see Bell's in Michigan, right, in Kalamazoo. They still to this day have their homebrew shop off to the side. And you saw places in...
Well, Ballast Point started as a homebrew mart, and now they have 4 locations in
and $1 billion.
And they just got a huge... But we don't really envision... I mean, we just want to get doors open, be a local, community-based little neighborhood brewery here and have fun with it. But yeah, a lot of... we're not the first to do it, for sure, but we're the first in the city that's going to be a full-time homebrew shop and full-time brewery simultaneously.
Oh, yeah, well, that's cool. And like I said, I like that. I like that you guys have that vision for interplay, because I think, if I remember correctly, you were also talking as you're brewing beers in the brewery and releasing them up to the tap room just on the other side of the homebrew area.
Yeah.
That those recipes would also become available.
Right. And I think in kind of, your work in experimental brewing and such, I think one of the challenges homebrewers have is controlling conditions or having the patience to do a lot of experiments. So they may want to try a new yeast or hop or something, but they also have they promise their brother that they're going to make their, the porter that they love for the wedding coming up. So brew days get eaten up and they don't necessarily get to do all the research they want to. So we hope to be a lab in a sense that when the beers are on tap, we tell exactly what ingredients were used, if it's a single hop beer maybe, or if we might split a batch or do 2 different yeast strains, and try to advance that educational level for homebrewers without them having to do all the legwork, and then they can walk 20 feet over and go, I really like that yeast, I'm going to try it in my next batch. Or they go, I don't really like it, I'm going to stick with what I know or something. But they didn't have to go through the brew day and wait it out and get to their end result only to find they have 5 or more gallons of some beer that they really weren't such a fan of, so they could cut that educational level down or time frame down.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and so that's kind of taking it a little bit further than where you see a lot of breweries doing kind of their single hop series.
Right.
So now this gives, we have even more exposure and we have the homebrew angle directly there.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. All right, so traditional question I always ask everybody, because it's one of my favorite. What is your favorite curse word?
I know hers.
Well, right. I may have changed it.
Yeah, well.
In the next couple days, but.
Yeah.
So what's yours? I'd like to actually.
I know. I'm going to steal her thunder. Yours is the F-bomb, probably. Yours is.
Well, I'll tell you what my go-to one is, and I'll tell you what my very brand new favorite is. So you can start with yours.
Well, I know the brand new favorite. I was going to use that.
Okay.
So I'll let you say it.
So my favorite traditional swear word is fucker. You know, describes pretty much everything. A person can be a fucker, or a computer, when it acts up, can be a little fucker. I love that word.
Yeah.
My new favorite word is bitch hole.
Which is brought to us by our friend's young daughter, who basically combined a couple of things. So I was going to say, I tend to like creative uses of like non-standard. So like not fucker, but it'd be like fuck stick or something random where you combine it. So bitch hole, when we hear this little girl say it, just became a new favorite. Like I have to figure out how to use that often and you know, find the opportunities.
And let's qualify little girl. This little girl will leave her name out of the equation. She is learning how to speak very well. She had trouble speaking, and she's finally learned how to speak really well. So, you know, she's been around people, adults, and adults swear from time to time, and she picked up a few words. Well, now that she can speak clearly, she has made her own. So that was what she started saying the last couple of days. And her mom was, excuse me? And she kept saying it. So now that has become my new favorite because I just think it's brilliant.
So made a creative use of swear words, curse words. I like that.
Really, it's an ingenious crafting of language.
Yes.
Well, and see, for me, I was mostly deaf until I was 4, so I didn't speak before that.
Right.
And then after I started to hear and could speak, you can hear talk to my mom. She will tell you I never stopped speaking since. And yeah, apparently I also was very creative with it.
Well, and you know, in her defense, bitch is a female dog, technically not a swear word, and hole is also not a swear word.
Yeah.
So none of it is technically a curse word.
Right.
You are technically correct, which is the best sort of correct.
Right. But when put together and out of the mouth of babes, it just rings like very shockingly awesome. So
my new
it's
favorite.
pretty cool.
All right. So now that we've got the cursing out of the way, let's talk biography, right?
Yeah.
Because you all have a biography behind beer and how you got here.
Yep.
So spill the deets.
So I was in the Army I retired from the Army in 2014, but back in 96 I was playing rugby for a team, and our after game and after practice bar, we'd go to this little German bar, and there was a homebrewing kits in the corner, and I just randomly bought one day, and so started making really bad beer at home for a while. Right around that time, Shay and I got married shortly thereafter, so she married me with a homebrewing habit, and it just kind of continued throughout all of our moves and in the Army, and I would change equipment or change whatever I had to configure to the new brew space every 2 or 3 years, and just stuck with it. And then in our last assignment here in San Francisco, we kind of transitioned and said, let's do this for our next career. So I went to the American Brewers Guild school in 2014 as well, and kind of tried to hone in the craft a little more, and then we've been working on this project for the last couple of years. So, and Shay's entering the beers through me, like coming along to. She's front of the house stuff. She's good. She's good at the bar front, serving beers and everything.
She's the face.
Yes.
So yeah,
you don't want it to be mine for sure. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked vodka and different types of liquor, vodka and gin in particular, and you know, I was never a beer drinker really. And then you know, I like wine too, and it's taken me a longer time in our relationship to sort of warm up to beer. But I feel like in the last 10 years or so, I've really it's my taste and my palate for it has really evolved, and I've really come to appreciate it far better than I ever thought. You know, so people who say they don't like beer, or maybe in a relationship with someone who is brewing beer and I don't like beer. I feel like if you give it time and you know keep trying it, you get used to it and you find out beers that you love. So so he made me fall in love with beer.
All right. Well, so then that's the big question. Mm-hmm. What was the magical beer? Was there a magical beer, or was it just general sledgehammer?
I think no. I think that I'm not a hoppy. I don't love a lot of IPAs. Mm-hmm. I will drink one from time to time, or have small amounts of from time to time. But for me, I can't remember one particular beer of his that really turns me on. But he was really considerate in our relationship and said, "I'll make you a beer you might like." And so he started with he used to call it the shea berry beer. So he'd make a beer once a year, add some berries into it, kind of giving it more palatable for someone who may not love beer. And so it started there, and then he'd make beers during Christmas time or during Halloween with those sort of fall flavors in them, and that sort of started I like those, and sort of evolved from him really including me into what he think I might like, and saying I want you to enjoy this, so here's a beer I've made for you. So it was more, I'm tasting the love at first and less of the beer. And now I like beer. So.
Look, the magical ingredient is love.
Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
That brings me back to the rugby and getting into the beering thing. One, I'm shocked that rugby team would have beer involved.
I think we were the first to do it.
Ever.
Right. People followed us there. You see it all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I've never met a rugby player who drinks. I was going to say rugby drinker who plays, and that'd be a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
So do you remember what the first beer was that you brewed?
Yeah, it was a porter. That's been our son's middle name is Porter.
For that reason.
And like every time I've adjusted systems, it seems I always just do an inaugural porter. And I was going to do that here at FDR for our brewery, but I couldn't get the yeast in time, so I had to do something different for the first time in a long time. But yeah, I still have the notes to that very first brew ever, and as I was looking through them, I think it had so this is 96, there wasn't nearly as much literature out there. No, if there was internet, it was, I wasn't on it for sure, so I was kind of flying blind, and I looked back at the little notes I had scrolled out, and I think it had 2 pounds of corn sugar in it, and it was, not a great first effort, but I also think if I looking at my notes, if I'm reading them correctly, I may have, and it's a long time ago, so we can't confirm or deny, I may have thrown the yeast in the boil, not understanding the process, and then confused as to why it wasn't kicking off, and I tried to chill it. It had snowed, so I had the fermenter, I had it, or the boil bucket or pot out in the snowbank, trying to get this thing down to temp then, and I don't know, it was a mess. So, but I didn't dump it. A friend of ours said he liked it enough that he had most of it and was good with that, and I just kept going from there.
I think people underestimate the importance to a new brewer who is going to become a long-term brewer.
Right.
That friend who will drink anything.
Right. Get rid of this. I need my bottles so I can bottle the next batch.
Wait. Is this cold, alcoholic, and free?
Yeah.
I'm there.
It's like a friend with a truck.
Exactly.
Notice how many friends you have when you own a truck?
Yeah.
It's the same concept.
Yeah, there's a good reason I've never owned a truck. I don't like moving that much.
Yeah.
All right, so this is one of my favorite questions because to ask brewers, omitting the word balance, describe your brewing philosophy.
Omitting the word that I can't say now.
Yes.
Brewing philosophy. I think for me, it's about foundations and understanding what each ingredient's bringing to the beer. And part of the staying connected to home brewing or having the homebrew shop here is, if we can, or as we develop our recipes and put them out for the public or for brewers to try to use, I want them to understand, like, it's where was I going with this? This is tough, Drew. I can't use that word. So, well, I think a good foundation is important. So, as a new home brewer, before you start doing your experimental things or getting too crazy with weird ingredients and such, I think you should understand what each part of the process is doing or bringing to that profile. So I tend to start my recipe formulation with what I want the final tasting and aroma experience to be, and then I back plan it from there, like, well, how am I going to coax those things into it? And it may not be that B word. It may be, I want it to be, super hot focus or super malty, or I want the yeast to shine, or so if I can't use that B word, then it's drinkability, and that you want someone, when they get to the end of it, to want another one of them, or that they could have another one of them, because however you brought it all together, or however I bring it all together, that tasting experience I was shooting for, they enjoyed it, that it's palatable, and they would look to have another glass. So, like, we do a Belgian orange chocolate stout, and my inspiration was those chocolate covered oranges you get around the holidays. Mm-hmm. And I've literally had people, without seeing any literature or copy on it or any of my descriptors, they're just tasting it, and they come and they've said that exact phrase to me. This reminds me of those chocolate covered oranges you get around Christmas.
You're talking the ones that you slam down on the counter and it falls into chocolate wedges.
Just one of those things, you take inspiration from everyone, you see that and go, that probably make a pretty cool beer. And then I started thinking how I would do that, and ended up going through a series of Belgian yeast to kind of pick one that really, I think, makes it shine. And so to have someone come back through and say that's the exact experience they had, whether it was, now I can use balance, whether it was balanced or not, whatever, they got the flavor profile that I was shooting for, and that's, to me, was a success. So
now, I'm trying to remember, you did that one as a homebrew as well, right?
Yeah, I've done it as a homebrew.
Because I think I've had it before, and I think you had it in competition.
You probably had a bad version of it, because I've gone through different iterations of how I wanted to put the orange and chocolate in, and some of them definitely worked better than others. And I actually entered some in comps to get that additional feedback of, I don't think this is really working, and I want to see if other judges agree with me. And so that's been valuable. So now I'm kind of settled into what I think is a good approach to it that I've been very happy with. And as it comes out, the very first time I brewed it, I split it and did an English yeast and like the Chimay yeast, and then the Belgian yeast was just far better. It just made it all shine better. And then I ran through a series of, well, let's try all these other Belgian yeasts, and I came back full circle and said the best one's been the first one we ever had. So that's the approach we're going to take here as we try to ramp it up to a 7-barrel batch.
So can you, since the listeners will obviously ask this question, yeah, can you share what the magic is for the orange and the chocolate flavor?
Yeah, I actually am just using extracts. These, I believe the company's called Star K, but I've tried doing like the orange with. There is a little bit of sweet orange peel in the finish of the boil too, but like I've had beers that you try to do a bunch of orange. Orange can be tricky to deal with as a fruit if you're really using it, and so this extract is, I mean, the label is 100%. Well, I mean, it's extract, so it doesn't have anything else in it. It's just orange though. So it's really quite powerful though. So going over the top is pretty easy. So you got to be careful with it. And then they make a chocolate extract syrup, not a syrup, but an extract as well that I've found has worked better than cocoa powder. Always clumps up and ends up falling out of solution and looks really bad in the glass. And then nibs and different things have just. Other people love them. I haven't ever been a huge fan of them. So when I came across this other extract, I was like, I like that. So that's the approach we're going now. And that would be as we make that recipe available, that would be what we would recommend if you wanted to recreate it, to go get that brand of extracts and use it and flavor to your liking. So.
Mm-hmm. And now, do you ever get into the brewery show?
No, I don't very often. I want to more. I feel like during this experience,
you were there the other day.
I was there the other day.
She was stowing in. She was doing all the paddling and stirring the mash as I was
the heavy. I was the heavy.
And then she did some raking. So I was like, I like this. I like these jobs. This is good. So.
I'm like a doer. Like I like to, I'll like to stir. I'll like to take all of the spent grains out and put it in the trash. That's the stuff, I'm handy.
Since we had this project going, I would invite her to say, well, you want to brew with me? I'd be at home still. And she'd say, no, I want my first batch to be on a big system. So she held true to that. So we were brewing
every day. Why would I do it on that Jimmy rigged system? We have a lot of money into a big system. Why not start big? Yeah. So I plan on starting to brew in the near future, for sure. I have interest in it. I think I just feel like family life and kids, and we've always had to juggle, hobby versus responsibility, so we both can't be in the same place at one time a lot, especially when the boys were younger. So now I feel like they're at an age where we have more freedom. And so, freedom to open up a new place and have a new baby, because this is our new child. It takes up all of our attention.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so two thoughts. One, it's really great that you consider yourself a doer, because frankly, if somebody came into my brewery and said, here, I'll handle the grains for you, I'd be like, yes, please, thank you.
Yes.
You're awesome. And then the other one is, so now, given that you're starting to set foot in the brew house, have you put any thoughts to a proto beer that you'd want to make?
Kevin won't let me do one. I love sours. No. Kevin won't let me finish my sentence. Yeah, he won't let me do. I love sour beers. I would love to do a sour beer. I know that you can't, because then you have to dedicate.
Well, we could do a kettle sour.
Yeah, so we could do a smaller sour. I would love to do a sour. But
I won't rule out a kettle sour. We could kettle sour a Berliner Weisse or something like that.
Kevin, where's the love? Where's the love?
Yeah, your last spot, I think one of your recent ones, you had Barrett, the sour guru. Yeah,
yep.
That was scary to me. I've had barrels at home. I've done some sour. I've never had great success, because I've lost track of them. They've been in the barrel way too long, and they've been a little 5-gallon barrel, so there's the surface area to
too much oxidation
over the top, and then I even brewed another batch and tried to blend it, and then that sat in a fermenter bucket for what turned out to be another half year or more. And because I would try to keep all the equipment separate, I just would never get to it, because then as we were bringing FDR to life, we were doing a bunch of charity events and different things, and so I was brewing regularly at home quite a bit, but it was all, every beer was almost earmarked, so I was busy with that. I just never really got into the sours enough to do it justice, because I think the guys who do it and blend them and make great sours, you need to put in the time and do it right, and I don't know that I have. So.
Well, it's a different rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly to your point. Whenever I do sours, I have to really fight my tendency to kind of walk away from it and forget that it's in existence, and then go, don't crap.
Yeah,
right.
I've exceeded the length. And I swore I was going to be better. I put another beer in the barrel, and now that one's, I think, it's been a year, and it should have only been maybe 3 months or something. But it's but no, I mean, post-ferment or fermenting sour is not something we have the space here that I'd be comfortable doing, or we don't have a way to do that, and I don't want to bring those things into the brew house, especially just getting started. That's not something I want to tackle or try to tempt fate in that way. But I mean, I've done a Berliner Weisser at home with sour the mash, but I can sour the kettle pretty quickly too. Gay East has some good products for doing that.
Yeah, I think it sounds like this might be an important step for your marriage.
Yeah.
So a Saison maybe. Yeah, 20-year marriage goes down the tubes because he won't let me brew a sour. I do like Saison. So I like beers that tend to have a little sourness to them, that appeals to my palate more. And so I've kind of been thinking, since raking out the grains, I have a little time and stirring the mash, perhaps a Saison of some sort. A Saison.
The Saison.
See how that works. So,
well, and I was going to say, it makes me laugh because you have, I think, 3 beers on right now that are fermenting: a Session IPA, your Belgian orange chocolate, and a Saison. And I've been running around thinking recently that it seems like every brewery that opens now, it's no longer, hey, I've got my pale ale, my wheat, and my stout. It's, I've got my IPA, I've got my other IPA, and I've got my Saison.
Right.
So at least you have the Belgian stout.
That's stuff in there. Well, and I think that's the beauty. He's right about the system. It's like being kosher. You have to keep it all separate. Nothing can touch anything else. So since we don't have that, but other than not doing sours, I feel like his strength is just saying, we're not beholden to having a flagship beer and we're going to always have these beers on tap. We own this brewery partly because he wants to experiment and say, no, I feel like doing this, or I feel like doing that. We're not, we'll have some beers that I think we'll always have, a few, but for the most part, the rest can just be whatever he's feeling on the whim. And what's the point of, we don't plan right now going into production, so it's not as if we have to create that sort of following about a particular beer. Mm-hmm. So I like the freedom that he has to just brew whatever he wants, minus the sours.
So the plan is basically then just to keep distribution right here in-house?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so our goal is to sell most of our beer through the tap room. And have that interactive experience with customers and get the feedback that they're enjoying it or what they want to see or whatnot. We'll look to self-distribute some kegs to area restaurants or bars that are beer focused. But yeah, we're not, we don't have any plans to bottle or can or anything. We could potentially maybe on an anniversary or some special release or do something because there are some mobile packaging options available because we don't have space here for that really either, but they could come in for a day to knock out a batch or do something. So we haven't put that, never say never, but we're definitely not like
it's not your focus.
Cranking out a production level 20 or 30 barrel brew house of just making a bunch of the same thing and getting it canned and on the store shelves. So we lived, one of our last assignments in the Army was Germany. One thing that we just loved about Europe, Germany specifically and Europe in general, is that you have so many just city or little regional breweries that service that area. You don't see their products throughout the whole country. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of what made those towns unique is you go find their little brew house and their little place and just enjoy what they had because that's the only place you're going to get it. So, we don't aspire to become the next Sierra Nevada or something that's building a second brewery on the East Coast, this massive national footprint. We would rather, to me it's going to be cool when someday some guy from Omaha is sitting at the bar and saying he read about us online and made it a point that when he came to San Francisco, he knew he had to stop by FDR because that's the only time he's going to get to taste these beers. So, if we ever had that, I'd feel pretty ecstatic. So, but we'll just as happily service the local area here and all the residents that live within walking distance, and that's where it all starts. But that's who we want to focus on, just focus local. And if someone comes to us, then that's great too.
Great. All right. So we talked about the Belgian orange.
Yep.
But what would you say is the most unusual beery thing you've ever done?
Unusual beery thing.
The wit with the extracts?
No, which one?
The wit with the extracts when we made the lavender basil extract to pour into the wit. That was a little...
That was a Berliner Weisse. We tried it. So
excuse me. Yeah.
it was at a picnic to people who weren't, it wasn't a beer crowd necessarily. We took the Berliner Weisse that I had made, but we made our own. Traditionally those are served with syrups or have an option, and so we didn't make a Woodruff. We made a basil lemon syrup. It was this nice green. It turned it this vibrant green color, and then we made a raspberry syrup, which was more traditional. But the basil was surprising, that herbal component, and people weren't expecting to like it at all, and they were coming back for more. So you had this sourness that they weren't used to, and then this basil thing. It was definitely, I think that was, I mean, for us, or for me, I had obviously read about or seen these things or had something similar, but exposing or serving that at a picnic with a bunch of non-beer geeks that you could see their head kind of exploding with, to them beer was yellow fizzy stuff, and they're like, what is this you're calling beer? And it was a flavor profile that wasn't like anything they had really had. So that's what I was.
So I get that totally wrong. I'm like the wit with the lavender basil. I'm so tired.
I think you're allowed.
I'm so exhausted right now.
Yeah.
I keep on telling Kevin, I'm like that marathon runner who, they're like 20 meters from the finish line, and all of a sudden their body breaks down and they're like literally crawling. Everybody's cheering them on, and they're, practically throwing up and just buckled, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get there. I'm just so tired.
And our doors open.
Yeah, our doors are so.
Yeah.
Yes, it was the Berliner Weisse. Excuse me.
Yeah,
But any other one that you can think of?
That's really weird. Not that would qualify as weird in Drew's book. He's done.
Well, but remember, my book is not the only book here. We do, you have Denny, who of course thinks that anything that I do is weird.
Right. I mean, one of the things to me with the homebrew shop, I think a lot of times, and I mentioned this before about having the foundation of knowing how this stuff works before you start throwing the kitchen sink at your recipes. And I want to try to. That's probably the pulpit speech that I would give to new home brewers is, let's get the basics down and then get into adding things and really try to rein them in, because I think a lot of times home brewers will, especially new ones, will
have
make
enthusiasm.
make a spice beer or something, and it's heavily overspiced. And I've done it. I mean, I look back at some of my recipes and think like the very first pumpkin spice beers I ever tried were probably borderline undrinkable, but because we were hosting the party and the beer was free,
people loved it.
People like it. So
see previous discussion about people who will drink anything.
Right.
Well, so yeah, I'm just trying to think. I usually, years ago, I had a humanities class when I was in middle school. So this gives you an idea. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
And my teacher of that class quoted Pablo Picasso, who had said something along the lines of, before you attempt a cubist painting, you should be able to draw the most perfect still life. And it's the same sort of thing. And I actually, dear listeners, I know this will be shocking to you, but even with all the sort of crazy banana type stuff that I do, I'm still very much in that belief.
But you have to be. Yeah. Well, you don't have to be. You all listeners can have your own opinions. My opinion is you should know this or have your processes, procedures down, so that if you are experimenting or doing different things, you have some reasonable expectation that what you changed or what you were trying to do is a result of that action, and not because you failed to do something very basic, or the base recipe was clearly flawed, and regardless of the experimental part, you would have not had a good beer, or you would have had problems. But that's just kind of me. I mean, that's just where I think some people a lot of our beers, if we put on a beer here, because we have the homebrew shop, if we say it's if we say it's a Belgian or Trappist single, then it should be by style guidelines within those guidelines. If we say it's something wacky or different, then fine, throw the style guideline, or it's a specialty beer. But if we say we're putting a Kolsch on tap, then I want that to be like stylistically what a Kolsch style beer would be. So
there you go. Get it right back into the Colm tree or whatever it is.
right.
All right. So, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you in the brewery? Like beer mistake or physical injury or stupid thing that you've done?
Well, not the worst thing. Stupid just happened recently, of course. So we're just getting the brewery, my very first inaugural brew here on the 7-barrel system. And Shay and my brother had left, so I'm going solo to try to bring this thing to a close. And we actually didn't even have a spent grain. We had a spent grain plan, but the recology container hadn't arrived yet, so I knew we wouldn't have a place for those overnight. So rather than let the grains just sit in the mash tun overnight and dry and get caked out and make my first cleaning of the mash tun really difficult, I thought, well, I'll flood the tank with water again just to keep it wet, which I knew would smell horrible the next day, but I was correct when I went to clean it. It was much easier because it had stayed liquid. But while I was filling that tank with water, I went over and I was checking something at the fermenter. Right as I turned around, the hose flew out of the mash tun, hit the brew deck. It was locked in the on position at the high-powered stream of water, and it drills me right in the chest. Like I'm getting shot by this, hot water, right center chest, about a 12-foot stream of water. I'm then fighting, getting out of, and as I stumble over to turn the hose off, I stumble into the little brew control panel, and I must have hit the emergency off to my brew kettle. And as I'm soaking wet and I'm kind of sorting out what the hell just happened, then I'm looking, my brew kettle's off, and I'm thinking, great, now I got a circuit breaker, something like, it's just, everything's going sideways. And then I realized, oh no, I just stumbled into the brew controller while I was shooting myself with water somehow from 12 feet away. So when someone says you can't spray yourself with water from 12 feet, I would challenge that assumption, because it can be done. You just have to set it up correctly. So.
It's very Rube Goldberg, but it still works.
It was, my brother said, man, if you had a video just like observing you, that would have been a viral sensation, right?
And it would have had a bunch of people online doubting the authenticity of it. That's ridiculous.
Right.
He meant to do that.
It was really, that was about 10 and a half or 11 hours into brew day 1 when I'm trying to figure this system out, and that actually brought a smile and made me chuckle, like, man, after all this is how I get paid back, is to get doused with even more water. So
I think it's the brewer's life.
Yeah.
Now, for the record, when you start to mention flooding the tank to keep the grains wet, Shay and I both instinctively just wrinkled the nose at the possible aroma.
Yeah, well, I knew it would be, not pleasant the next day when I came to clean.
Well, he texted me the next day, because I'm now trying to get Recology to get our spent grain bin back there. Where's the bin? Where's the bin? It was supposed to be here yesterday, and they're like, there was a mix-up. But he's texting me going, man, this is awful smelling.
Yeah.
So,
Don't open the mash tun. Don't let the cops nearby. They might think there's a dead body.
But it was, aside from the smell, it was very easy to clean out. Then it worked out well. So.
Well, there you go.
But we're new at this, so worse things can happen.
Yeah.
This is true, but hey, it's always good to get something bad, out of the way on the very first one.
Yeah.
Because then, all right, hey,
Right.
what the hell? All right, next question. What common wisdom brewing practice do you believe is wrong, or everybody's concerns about is overinflated?
Oh, jeez. So something that people are doing that.
Something that people swear by, that this is the right way to do it, it's the only way to do it, and that you either don't agree with or you think that like their concerns about are overinflated that causes them to do something strange.
I'm kind of going to reverse it and say I think what people, especially homebrewers, what they don't pay close enough attention to is fermentation control. And so they put they have a budget and they get eyes on the slick, sexy, biggest, newest 3-tier or the pumps and gadgets and a beautiful stainless little home brewery that they're going to go buy and spend a lot of money on. And then, well, how are you fermenting it? And it's, I throw it in some buckets in the closet or something. To me, you're overlooking. That adage of brewers make work and yeast make beer holds true, in that you have to, I think, spend more time understanding fermentation control and process. So, to me, that would be the one I would like to see homebrewers put more attention to, and not think of these whatever they're spending their time and money on trying to understand. Get some oxygen into your wort. A lot of people still don't do that. They just overlook it. It's not that important. I'll splash it around a little bit. But a little red O2 bottle with a little oxygen wand would go a long way to improving fermentation. So, and then a simple thermostat control on the fridge or something. But try to control ferment better. I think people think it's too that's the hard part of brewing is the cold side, the sanitized side. That's where all the problems, I think, probably as a judge, 90% or more of the flaws that I find in homebrew comps, you can trace back to ferment problems. Very rarely is it process in the brew day, or, you'll have some recipe comments occasionally as well, but
Please don't use 2 pounds of corn sugar in your beer.
Right, that would be a good one. Don't make a porter with 2 pounds of corn sugar. That tastes really thin and acidic, vinegary, horrible ferment. So that's my point stands. I didn't control ferment at all in that thing, and it wasn't a good beer. So I don't know if that kind of reversed the question.
That's fine.
What I think people should spend more time understanding and really get into.
Your point is this big sexy system isn't going to make the beer.
Right. The overemphasis on wort production. I would take an extract brew fermented well. I would bet is probably going to be a better tasting beer than someone who makes really great wort on this high speed all grain system, and then they just don't really manage to ferment very well, and that's where all the bad stuff happens.
Metal is sexy, but you can't drink it.
Right.
All right. So since you obviously have your little homebrew shop down here, and you're already talking about spending a lot of time understanding your ingredients and getting a good foundation going, let's knock out the ingredient questions here real quick. Just rapid fire. What's your favorite malt?
Probably Maris Otter.
Favorite yeast?
Learning. Favorite yeast. You've stumped me, the rapid fire. I know I'm not playing the game right.
Answer it.
At a homebrew level, I was a fan of dry yeast quite a bit, and I would use US-05 a lot, but I really loved the Bell Saison dry yeast. That thing chews through everything really well.
And do you have a favorite one yet at the pro level? Or
We're using a lot of Giga yeast. I'm trying to use all Giga yeast so far because they're local. They're really close. I get yeast that was made 2 days ago, and I'm pitching it in a 7-barrel batch. So far so good. They got the Scaramount strain, the trace back to Chimay, and that's the Belgian yeast that I'm using in that stout that I really liked through the years. So, but it's ripping through it. So I'm pretty happy thus far. So
cool. All right, favorite hop?
Amarillo.
Amarillo. All right, and favorite other ingredient that we haven't mentioned? Anything else that you really love?
Shay says love.
I say love. All about the love.
Other ingredient. It's hard to work with, and it's not fun to use, but I like a little bit of rye in some recipes just to and not necessarily like I've made Roggen beers and such, and I've made probably a bastardized version of Denny's rye PA because I didn't have the hop C called for, so I changed it up. But I like a rye PA and whatnot. But there's a little bit of rye in the Saison that I do, and just I like throwing it in different beers just as a kind of sneaky thing. Like actually the Saison I had at the California State Homebrew Comp last year, that place was, the judge comment was they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was, and I was looking at it going, that was probably that little bit of rye that you didn't.
That's a good level to have that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what rye is to you is how I treat oats. I love having a little dose of oats or oat malt and a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Because I really love that character.
Yeah. A friend of mine makes an oatmeal amber that just people love, and I think a lot like an ingredient like that, or it's almost below threshold, or I like making a beer that, especially if you spice or do something where someone's going, something's there, they can't quite put their finger on what it is, and that's, I think, a good level, because you're not beating them over the head with it, but you're adding intrigue and complexity to it.
Right. So, all right. Real quick, what are some of your favorite flavors?
What are your favorite flavors?
Dishing it off like an experienced married couple.
Right, look at him. I do like citrus, like a hint of citrus in a lot of the beers that I tend to like, because like once again I like sours.
But you don't like big bitter.
I'm not a big bitter. I'm not into bitter flavors. I'm more into sour flavors, and so anything that goes sour. So I like a little bit of citrus. I like coriander, some of that, spice, but not that. So you can like, oh, that's coriander. I like hints of coriander.
I like middle flavor, like sea hop, just old classic American sea hops, like
Cascade, Centennial.
I can do those in the middle of beers, like. I still enjoy that quite a bit. So.
And when you say in the middle of beers,
just as flavor hop additions. I mean, I like the big nose, but you asked for flavor. I mean, I love citrusy, tropical, piney. Like I love a huge hop dose. Like I have them tattooed up and down my arm, but it's. But I don't have to always have IPAs either. I'll do other stuff. I like. A little bit of a biscuity note, like in some darker beers or a porter or something, like have a little bit of malty, breadiness, biscuit. Like I like that flavor profile too.
Toasty.
Real quick, since you said that, Shay, you said you don't like bitter flavors, but you like citrus. Now, have you had much time to play around with or explore the sort of like the newer style of IPAs where they're like shoving in as much the hop flavor but trying to avoid as much of the bitterness so that you get like the big citrusy notes and everything, or is that still...
No, I think that's still new to me. I mean, that's something that would definitely appeal to me. I love the smell of hops, like for me the nose of hops, like that juicy fruity smell of hops sometimes can really, like I love that. But when it comes to like a really like double, triple IPA and it gets really bitter, that's where it starts to, I'm not as big of a fan.
She has been, like when we went back to beer school in Vermont and Heady Topper, and I know there's the current debate on color, but there's a reason I think they say drink it from the can, because then you don't see what it looks like, but the nose on that she really, really loved, and it has a great aroma, and if you don't want to drink it with your eyes and don't look at it, I think it's a really nice beer. Here, I think in other parts of the country it's not as much of a debate, but because there's such thing as a West Coast IPA, or there's such a...
there's a big religious belief.
There's such a, like, we created that style or a feeling of that's...
It's ours.
It's ours, not to...
It's like East Coast versus West Coast.
But even more so.
So...
Just to revisit one of the words that you said, because you use the word juicy, And a lot of people use that when they're talking about this sort of New England IPA, newfangled hop thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm not so much about having rants about this sort of word, but Denny does for some reason. So this one's for Denny. I'm going to ask this whenever somebody uses the word juicy. When you say the word juicy, what do you mean?
Well, juicy to me, like, I don't know, I guess the best way to describe it sometimes is, I feel like you can take two oranges side by side, or a fruit of any sort side by side, and if you have them at the market, and you can smell the freshness of it. Like, you can smell one that's fresh and smell one that's not fresh. Like, the one that's fresh is like juicy to me. It means it's ripe, it's ready, it's just waiting for you to dive into it. That's what I mean by juicy. Whereas, you have a fruit that's been sitting for a while longer, you can smell it, that it smells like an orange, but it's not something you're like, oh, I can't wait to have that.
It's big, it's bright, it's fresh.
Big, it's bright, it's fresh. It's like, when you think of, farm to table, you think of juicy, like vegetables and fruits, like they're right there, they're ready for you to eat in the moment, right? As opposed to something that's gone through this massive chain of distribution to finally get to your table. Those don't seem as juicy. So I use that to be big and fresh. And
so it's that evocation of freshness.
Yes, and it also like makes your mouth water. You can't wait to actually taste it. So when I have a beer that I can't wait to taste, because of the smell of it. I mean, obviously, before you even taste a beer, you usually smell the beer. And so that little moment of anticipation between smelling it and tasting it is big for me.
I thought I heard you say juicy fruit. I like the gum or something, which has a distinct.
That's another place people take it too. But
but both, I do, and I like that smell. I think the smell of hops appeals to me. It sometimes gets a little too bitter, but I think that if I can find, these new styles of beer that, sort of balance that, the B word, sorry. I feel like I can't use that word now. That sort of balance that, I like hops for how they smell.
I love the approach of a lot of late hops and that New England style, as far as not having to be as bitter as some of the West Coast varieties. I think here we would try to do that with some clarity though, and not have it as murky looking and whatnot, just because we're not filtering here, but we'll use some fining agents and such, and I tend to try to brew clearer beers or think they look more presentable, but I don't really care like where people fall on. That's what's great about beer, though, is that especially in the homebrewing community, is so many homebrewers. Well, why did you get into homebrew? Because I couldn't buy what I liked, and I had to make it myself. And so, if you like a cloudy beer, then make it, and if you don't, then don't make it or don't drink them. Like it's
To me, it's if it offends you, then let it offend you, and let other people enjoy it.
Right.
So, all right. So kind of along those lines, what is something that you wish that more people would drink or explore?
Well, I think and part of this is putting on a business hat now that we're owning a brewery and things like, how do you forecast the next trend or, this now that IPAs have been more than a trend or a fad for sure. They've had staying power, but they've morphed into all these different colors and spectrums, and the BJCP's even reclassified and identified certain specialty IPAs, and but now you see a lot of fruit IPAs. Like that's the next realm, and sours have been running their course. But I try to wonder, talking to some people here, it seems like it is starting to wane a bit. They're like, I'm tired of going to a place and they'll have 10 beers on tap and 6 of them are IPAs or some variant. Like,
I was at a place not too long ago where they had 40 taps, and I think of the 40, 36 were IPAs.
Right, and so they're a little tiresome. So, I don't know, is the next trend more, malt-focused beers, or are they going to be, lagers are going to be would be hard for us to do just because of throughput and such, and on our scale, tying up tanks for that long isn't really feasible, but throw out an occasional Kolsch or something cleaner and lager-like, or just a crisp, nice, refreshing beer that's not overly hoppy. Like, we want to bring those types of beers to people here, along with an occasional IPA and such. But I would like to see more variety. There's a lot of beers out there. We were talking earlier about people who say they don't like beers. I hear that comment as if someone's saying, I don't like food.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you do like some kind of food. You just haven't probably found the right beer for you yet. So if we keep just throwing out IPAs, they may never come around. But if you throw out some other things, some Belgian beers have a lot of neat characteristics from the yeast, and just play around with that and bring different things that people can enjoy, more than one thing.
We've been strongly pushing on the podcast that hey, let's make a return to the idea of a session beer.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The things that you can come to the place and have a couple
right.
In good shape.
I feel the bigger challenge in brewing in general, for the brew community in general, is to broaden their demographic. As opposed to the white bearded guy.
Bearded white guy.
Bearded white
Present
guy.
company.
Included,
that's me.
Right. Yes. And that's working well. So that's working well. It works well. However, I hear all the time, oh, I don't drink beer. Oh, I don't like beer. We have people who are excited for us to come to their neighborhood here on San Bruno Avenue, because there's nothing like us around here. And, oh, do you drink beer? Oh, what is this place? Oh, it's a brewery. Oh, I don't drink beer. Well, come in when we open. Let me give you a sample. Let me find a beer that you might like. So it's sort of broadening that idea, because I think now with the trend being hoppy IPAs, and that can feel bitter on the tongue to a lot of people, there are other things out there. So trying to get people in the doors who say they don't like beer, for me is like the challenge I want to take on, and say, I bet I can find a beer that you like. You may not love it right at first, but like anything, things are an acquired taste. So come back, try another one. His orange chocolate stout tends to surprise a lot of people, because they think it was big and heavy, and it's not. So there's a lot of people who, I don't like beer, but they love his orange chocolate stout. So starting there and kind of taking off from there.
I have a big belief that a lot of people go around trying to convert people to better beer the wrong way. Mm-hmm. They try and hey, here's my Kolsch, or here's my wheat beer, because they try desperately to run away from the dark beer thing. Mm-hmm. And I've converted more people with a well-placed glass of a good stout, because it plays into flavors that people already like with those coffee and chocolate notes.
Right.
And then you're adding some of the sweet candy type things with the orange and whatnot. Yeah.
We did an event the other day, and the gentleman we had the Saison and a porter. And I don't drink dark beers. I don't like dark beers. I said, well, try this porter. It's not heavy. It's not going to taste dark to you. And he came back and kept on coming back and kept on coming back, and he loved that beer, because people have a preconceived notion that it's like a meal.
Right.
Like a dark beer is going to be like a meal to them, and it's not the truth all the time. Most times.
So, just to kind of take things towards the finish line here. Yeah. Now that we've been talking for a little bit, so you guys are looking at opening when?
So we have a private event in a couple weeks for investors and other people who've helped us in this 2-year plus road that we've been on, and then somewhere around the Memorial Day weekend, we were aiming to open the doors to the public, just kind of soft opening. That's
27th, 28th.
Yeah, that weekend. So with the homebrew shop open, we've had a bunch of neighborhood gawkers walking in, and they're disappointed that the tap room's not open yet, and we haven't converted them to homebrewers yet, but they're excited. Yeah, but even if they don't, they're just so this area of the city we're in, there isn't really anything else like us within walking distance of a lot of residential space, so they're looking forward to it. So we're just looking forward to getting the doors open for them. And our aim is to have 8 to 10 beers on tap regularly, but by that weekend we should have about 4 to 5. But that's enough to get people in the door and start having something. So,
And the 8 to 10 that you'll have will all be house beers?
yes. So we're California's called a Type 23 license. So that's all we can serve is our own beers that we make. We can't serve other breweries. So.
Well, so that gives you extra incentive to keep the variety up.
Right.
And keep the tanks moving.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. And then just to close it out, we always like to close our show with, non-beer things for the week, right? And like it's something that we're all about. So, what is a non-beer thing that y'all are fascinated by or obsessed with?
That's a good question.
I could do an easy default to sports or something, but I don't know if that's something I'm fascinated with.
Yeah, like what's something that occupies the non-beery part of your brain?
Yeah.
Art.
For you, it's art,
for me it's
sure.
art. For
Any particular variety?
No, any. I've always dabbled in all different kinds of art, painting, stained glass, you name it, jewelry making, anything. So I've always dabbled in all of that, and with kids it's sort of been put on hold for the last 14 years. Ish. But now I feel like with the brewery, it's reinvigorating my creative side of me that I haven't always been able to express. And so we do here also hope to have an art wall for local artists to have small art openings here. And so that for me is kind of what I always think of. My head goes to like a creative space. Right now, the new MoMA is just opening up here in San Francisco, and Kevin and I had this discussion about it yesterday, and I'm kind of, fascinated by modern art. What makes modern art? What makes it art? Does it make it art? All of those questions that swirl around modern art. So I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
Well, I was going to say the backsplash, or the big wall piece behind the taps, that was done by you, right?
That was done by me.
So all stained and designed and...
Yeah, so, a lot of the stuff that's happening in the space is done by myself. And that's where I love it. Whether it's successful or not, I don't know, but I love it. And so that's what I'm presenting, and it feels good to me to have my hand on the projects.
And she is currently covered in paint splatters, so she's living the dream.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, and Kevin?
My fallback, I'm a sports guy. My brother's been down here helping us. He loves following sports, so we talk about that a lot. But I like music a lot too, and just the other night, I've been buried in this project to get this brewery going, and I missed, there's a rendition, the guy, Disturbed sang Sound of Silence on their latest album, and they had played it on Conan O'Brien, and I'm watching a video of this thing and just had it on repeat and just going and had it in the car then, and just to hear his vocal range, and so I really appreciate music, and I don't spend enough time appreciating it like I wish I could lately, but I'm glad I came out from under my rock of brewery, stuff to hear that one, so that was pretty cool. So music, and then I like baseball quite. We have friends that actually play in what they call the Bay Area Vintage Baseball League. So they play by 1886 rules, and it's all that we just shorthand. We just call it old timey baseball. But we haven't had time this spring. But last spring, I would often just go to Golden Gate Park and just take a Sunday afternoon and just watch these guys playing baseball, and it's pretty cool. That's just a leisurely sport, and you're watching them play. I don't know, but that's fun stuff for me.
That's cool. I don't think a lot of people know about the vintage baseball rule. So
yeah, it's an interesting approach. They get 7 balls to a walk, and you get hit by a pitch. It could be called a ball or a strike. You don't get to go to first. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's cool to watch. Oh yeah, right. He said we also have kids.
We have kids, so we enjoy doing stuff with them.
My mind has been occupied by them as well.
We'll put that plug in there too.
There you go.
We still enjoy our children.
and soon to be joined by a third child that's very big and inanimate.
The FDR.
Yeah, FDR.
Right.
All right. Well, hey, guys, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me. Good luck with the opening, and hopefully we'll be on sometime in about the same period of time as when you're opening, so that people can come find you. Address?
2636 San Bruno Avenue in San Francisco.
Not in South San Francisco, not in San Bruno itself, but in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And website?
Is our name
www.fermentdrinkrepeat.com.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you guys again. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody out there in the audience land had a good time listening in. So we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, man, those guys must have limitless energy. You often hear people say, "Oh, you're crazy to open up a homebrew shop. It's so much work. You're crazy to open up a brewery. It's so much work." And here they are doing both of them at once.
Yeah, and really having to kind of adjust to some of the challenges that they're facing. The homebrew shop part is obviously a small portion of the whole thing, right off the tasting room. Tasting room when I was there was still in flight, but it was looking set up and gorgeous with wonderful custom art. And then I just love the fact that they had to adjust what their brewing plan was based on the building.
Yeah, really. The other thing that I was happy to hear mention was their use of Star K white extracts. I got turned on to those by a friend quite a number of years ago, the chocolate extract specifically. And I've used a couple of the other ones, and I have thought that they were just outstanding. I know that you're a fan of the Olive Nation extracts. Have you used the Star K White?
No, I haven't. But I mean, I do know. I've heard of them before, and they have a pretty good reputation. So it definitely sounds like something I should reach out for just to try.
Yeah, they're readily available online. They might even be in stores. I've never actually looked. But I've used 2 or 3 different flavors of their extracts, and I have been completely impressed by the quality. So,
and they're available on Amazon, so we'll link to them in the show description.
Yeah, right. Okay, sounds great. So check the website for a link to the Star K White extracts. If you need some flavoring for your next beer, definitely something to take a look at. So I guess it's time now to take a quick break and answer some questions, huh?
You consider taking a break to be answering questions? Man, that feels like work.
Yeah, right. Well, we'll take a quick break so we can refill our beers and then answer some questions so it won't be so much like work. How's that?
I like that. That's a better plan.
All right, we'll be right back. It's just about time. It's just about time. Don't you think it's about time we talked about beer? Okay, this is the part where everybody sings. Beer, 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 beer. Beer, 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 beer. Beer, 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 beer. Beer, beer, beer. And as the ukulele fades slowly into the distance, for which we can all be grateful, it's time for Ask Denny and Drew, the part of the show where we try and see if we can come up with halfway decent answers to your questions. And Drew has the first one this episode.
Yeah, but first I just want to say, now I'm going to walk around all day with that damn song in my head. All right. First question comes from Tom Brennan, who emailed us to say, first off, I'm a big fan of the podcast. We love fans. Thank you. I discovered it somewhere around episode 4, so I listened to it as I go around for my walks at 5 in the morning. Yeah, I'm that kind of guy. Well, while I appreciate the walks at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm actually surprised that you don't consider this a safety hazard to be listening to us at 5 in the morning. But it says, your talk on brewing on the ones totally changed my style of brewing. My entire process has become so much simpler that along with some tweaks in my brew house have helped my beers taste even better. Okay, now that I've buttered you up enough, I just want to see if you think this is a crazy enough idea to work. You do not have to give me feedback on this, but a simple yes or no would be fine. Well, too bad, you're going to get a lot of feedback. And it's a wheat Saison. Tom emails in a wheat Saison recipe for 5 gallons, 57% two-row, 38% white wheat malt, 5% Cara 20 for some color, and then a half ounce of Sriracha Ace at 60 minutes, and a half ounce of Sriracha Ace at 5 minutes, with a pitch onto a previous dry yeast that he used. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Oh, I guess Denny too. All right, so
Ow.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah, now you know why it's in here. It's Saison, and it digs at Denny. Yay. No, all right. So the question seems to be about whether or not I agree with the recipe formulation here. And yeah, I totally do. What your recipe is there, Tom, is not too far off from my Saison Printemps, which is my wheat-based Saison that I do for the springtime, oddly enough. And it's a heavily wheat-based recipe because I like that flavor, and I like the lightness that goes up against it, and I think it also plays really, really well with American style hops like the Sriracha Ace, or I guess I shouldn't say American style hops, modern newfangled fruit forward hops. How's that?
Yeah.
My only concern with Sriracha Ace is always whether or not you get into lemon pledge territory, but that seems to be crop dependent. So my only change that I would say is I would probably still stick with my usual regime, which is a bittering dose of Magnum, and then load in the flavoring hops later. But I think you're going to be good enough, and you'll have an awesome, awesome lightweight Saison that you can guzzle down easily.
So in a nutshell, then, your answer would be yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Swedish. Drew speaks Swedish. I didn't know that. Okay, next question comes from Matt Scorer. And he says, "Hi, guys. Really been enjoying the podcast from here in the UK. Seems like the all-grain scene here is hotting up recently. I'd like to ask, what do you think is the best way to achieve that distinctive red color? It's difficult to calculate, as obviously SRM doesn't take redness into account, so I guess the only way to find out is to brew it." That's right, Matt. "I've heard roasted barley in very small amounts, but what percentage? Also read about specialty malts such as Cara Red and Cara Roma, but then some folks seem to have similar results with more standard crystal malts like Crystal 150. What have you used and what works best in your experience? Cheers, Matt Scorer." Well, Matt, like a lot of questions, the answer starts with, it depends. A little bit of roast barley, like 1% of your total grist, no more, in a recipe that has some other, slightly reddish malts already, like, some Crystal 60 or Dark Munich or something like that, will give you some red coloring. Now, it depends on how red you want it to be. Probably about the reddest beer you can make will be made with Red X malt as 100% of the grist at an original gravity of about 1050. Less gravity and you get more of a pale red color, higher gravity, and it starts darkening up on you. So if there's a style of beer that you can make using 100% Red X at 150, that's going to be your reddest color. You can make like things like alts, ambers, stuff like that with that kind of grist. Now, obviously, other beer styles won't work as well. You mentioned Cara Red. I have used Cara Red before, and I find that it does a really good job of getting some red color into the beer. You mentioned Cara Roma. Yeah, a little bit, but not quite so much. And then you also mentioned using standard crystal malts. Yeah, you can do it with that too. Something like maybe about 3% Crystal 120 or something like that might kind of get you into that area. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can go about this. And like you said, the best way to do it is to pick something and start brewing and then adjust from there if it's not what you want. Or get a hold of some of the Red X malt and give it a shot and see what that does for you. You got any other suggestions there, Drew?
Well, I'll just add in my 2 cents is part of what I think you need to think about, particularly on that crystal versus the Red X versus Sacra 50 versus the roast malt, is what exactly do you want when you say you want red? Because some people just want the color red, in which case totally go for something like Red X or the roast edition or the Sacra 50. But if you want red plus sort of slightly sweet, like a lot of people tend to think of red as being almost all automatically associated with the caramel, then in that case, that's when you want to reach for those crystals.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of gets back to what I was saying originally. It all depends on what you want out of that beer besides the color. There are a lot of ways to get to the color, but you got to get the flavor you want. So, keep that in mind. So, Drew now has one where the guy sounds just a bit peeved.
Yeah, this one definitely comes under the category of some ranty, hatey type stuff, but it was an interesting enough conversation for us to have. I thought we should answer it. This one comes from Mr. H, who emailed us, and it says, during the blank festival, I talked with a representative from a local brewery about an interesting popular brew they had on tap. After I complimented him on the brew I was drinking, I told him I was brewing a similar beer. He immediately said, well, I'm not going to tell you what we put in ours. First off, go F yourself. I never asked. Secondly, I'm a 5-gallon batch homebrewer, not Slugworth. I brushed that off and, yeah. Hey, Charlie and Chocolate Factory.
I know, man. I love it. A Charlie and the Chocolate Factory reference.
I brushed that off and told him an ingredient I used, and he laughed at me. I'll tell you, we didn't use that in ours. All right, dude, I'm going to make your beer, but better just to effing spite your ass using that particular ingredient. Who let this goon into the event, and why do some craft brewers act like this? Well, I can't talk to the specifics of this particular conversation that you had, except for it's kind of a crappy conversation. I will say that beer fests are not a lot of fun when you're on the craft brewer side of the table. Yeah. It's a hot, kind of just annoying job. A lot of times you're not being paid for your beer that you're being poured. It's all, oh, hey, look, it's good exposure for you. It's marketing dollars.
Well, yeah, everybody else is there partying and you're working.
Yeah. So one, I think that's going to tend to make people crabby to begin with. Plus, it's usually your weekend. But having said that, yeah, sometimes people are just bitchholes, to reference our earlier conversation. And that definitely sounds like a bitch-holy thing to say, coming from somebody. And I've known and I've met some craft brewers who are like this, who are, sort of, my recipes are proprietary. They contain my special magic. So I'm not telling you anything. And I also kind of feel like there's a little bit of a bass-ackwards way of trying to generate mystique about a particular beer. I obviously am not precious about recipes. I will put out recipes at the drop of a hat, so I don't care about it. But there are some people who are just going to be like that. So sometimes, yeah, you run into a craft brewer who is a dick, despite all the number of times that we can sit here and say, hey, you know what's the best policy in life? Don't be a dick. Now, having said that, at the same time, who knows? It could have been just a bad day. Guy had a long week. Yeah, you were the 20th person to come up and bug him about the beer that day. Whatever. There are lots of reasons that somebody's temper can fray, particularly over the course of pouring at a beer festival. So, hey, I don't know. A lot of times the good thing is that this sort of thing that you're talking about seems to be a relative rarity in the craft beer world. So that's a nice thing. And yeah, let's just hope it stays that way. If you run into the occasional dick, just remember, they're fighting their own battles, and they may just be a dick.
Really, man, maybe their dog puked on the carpet that morning. They got off to a bad start or something. But my experience is that those are a minority of the brewers out there. I do a tour for a local brewery here, and we have all the recipes for all the beers hanging on the info sheet on each fermenter. And when homebrewers come by, they take a look at them, and I say, hey, if you guys want to take a picture of that so you can have the recipe, feel free, We don't care. We know you're not going to be putting us out of business. So, yeah, you're going to run into those people who are like the letter here. But just take heart in the fact that most brewers are not going to be like that. A number of breweries even put their recipes on their websites, so... Okay, our final question today comes from Mike Hall via email. He wants to know, what's the difference between the BJCP style guidelines and the GABF style guidelines? I understand what each one stands for, but which one should I be using when creating recipes on my brewing software? Well, boy, there's like two intense questions there. I guess the first one is not quite so intense. Differences between BJCP and GABF is that the GABF has a much broader set of style guidelines. I don't remember how many styles there are. Do you remember? It's like 80 or 90, something like that?
It's 96, but remember that the GABF tends to focus on much broader top-level categories because they're trying to spread out the number of metals. The BJCP packs...
Yeah.
The BJCP actually packs more style categories into a smaller set of winnable metal categories.
Yeah, right. But basically the GABF wants to make sure that no commercial brewer is left out and can't find a category to enter their beer into. Now, down to the question of which one should you be using? I would say, depending on your purpose, either one or neither. If you are brewing a beer that you want to enter into a competition, we all know that in a competition, the purpose is to match the style guideline as closely as possible while minimizing any flaws in the beer, right? So if you're brewing a beer for a competition, then you definitely want to be using the BJCP style guidelines. It's just that easy, you know? If you're trying to recreate a commercial beer, then I would say you could use either one. And I would say that you don't really necessarily need to use either one because you'll know what the specs for the beer that you're trying to recreate are. You'll know approximately what the flavor is. So you'll have an idea of what to shoot for there. And then there are those beers where they don't fit either one. Something like clam chowder Saison, where you just get a wild hair to brew something, and it doesn't fit any known style guidelines, so you just kind of have to wing it and draw from your knowledge of other style guidelines, but not try to replicate them exactly. So there's my rambling Zen answer to that. You got anything to add, Drew?
Yeah, I would just say, remember that the guidelines themselves have radically different purposes, right? So the GABF guidelines tend to go directly to where commercial beers are pouring currently because, hey, they got to get those metals out there. The BJCP seems to have a more solid interest in, is this an actual thing, before they go and create their guidelines. I don't know. I mean, I'm a guy, I like style guidelines for the sort of, hey, give me a general picture to paint. And I think the more of them that are out there, the better. But then again, I also maintain my own style guidelines for the Falcons. So big surprise there.
Right. I think for most purposes, if you're trying to make a beer, for instance, if I'm trying to make an alt beer, I don't necessarily go and look at the GABF guidelines for different kinds of alts. I find that the BJCP guidelines are going to be getting me close enough that I can take it from there.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, I mean, like, there are some things, for instance, where the BJCP doesn't have the guidelines, or they don't anymore, they used to, like malt liquor. Malt liquor is a valid style, and it's out there, but, you can go and you can look at the GABF guidelines, and right there is, exactly what the specs on it should be, and the description and everything else. And the descriptions are also much, much more lightweight than what you find in the BJCP. So you have to take that into account as well. But they're
right. So
they're useful resources. I just consider them additional bullets of knowledge. But if you're going to brew typically as a home brewer and you're going to talk to other home brewers about your beer, they're going to mostly be versed in the BJCP world and not the GABF world. So
yep, that's true. Okay, well, I think that about does it for the questions this episode. I actually kind of felt like those were some semi-valid answers, huh?
It happens.
Yeah, even a blind squirrel finds a nut now and then, as they say. We also like to spend a little time on these podcasts talking about things other than beer because Drew and I do spend about 3% of our lives on things outside of beer. So you got something you wanted to talk about this time, huh?
Yeah, and I'm probably a little late to the party now that it's been out for about 2 weeks, but I am a child of the 80s. I was born in 1974, and almost all of my childhood memories are from the 1980s. And Netflix on July 15th released 8 episodes of the first season of a TV show called Stranger Things. And it's been getting rave reviews from people around the internet, and I finally dug into it, my wife and I, and she's also a child of the 80s. And it stars Winona Ryder as a mom, and there's a set of kids on an adventure. One of the kids goes missing, and there's basically these 3 separate storylines, and the show is 8 hours of a glorious remix of Stephen King, Steven Spielberg, and, just pure hardcore 80s nostalgia. With, all this sort of stuff where it's like going, oh my God, that's so like my childhood. See kids riding around on bicycles without parental supervision or helmets. It's amazing. But the story itself is actually...
should have been around in the 50s.
Yeah, no. But you really have to dig into the fact that, the show really has 3 sort of parallel stories happening at once. And each of the stories is kind of done in a different vein. Like, one of them is very much Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Another one is very much horror movie, like from, Freddy Krueger, Stephen King type horror. And then the third one is very much kind of like, E.T./Stand By Me. And it's just really awesome. And it really does hit hardcore on all the nerd nostalgia buttons. If you're a true pedantic, awful, terrible nerd, you'll say things like, the show is supposed to be taking place in 1983 in Hawkins, Indiana. And you'll hear some of the songs and go, hey, but that song wasn't released until 1985. Stop. Don't do that. Just enjoy the series. It's awesome.
Hey, it's TV.
So that's my recommendation. Stranger Things on Netflix. Again, it's 8 hours long. And you totally deserve to, give yourself this chance to have a little bit of a nostalgia hit, and also really enjoy a really well done, spooky as hell story.
Cool, man. I think I'll check it out the next time my internet is working.
So, in other words, next year.
We hope. Okay, and we have a quick tip now from a listener, and I'm going to let you handle this one also.
Yeah, so this is from listener Yaku, I think I got your name right, from Johannesburg, South Africa. We're global, Denny.
Oh, cool.
Yaku says, in episode 10, you had a listener comment about keeping beers the correct carbonation level when you're dispensing from a single CO2 cylinder. I agree 100% with your comment regarding serving the beer. Serve all at the same pressure. But I want to add my technique for getting the pressure right the next day because you never do it that night anyway. It's like he's channeling me.
Yeah, really.
I have inline John Guest taps, which are these detachable quick connect type taps, but other taps work as well between my cylinder and each of the kegs. So when the next morning's recovery beers have been consumed, I do the following. 1, I remove the empty kegs, no use wasting CO2. 2, close all inline taps. 3, find the keg that requires the lowest CO2 pressure/carbonation. 4, open the tap and check the level of pressure on the regulator. 5, adjust the regulator to the required level. If release is required, some regulators will release pressure automatically or will have a valve, otherwise just pull the keg's pressure relief, or disconnect the gas, get a flat screwdriver and depress the gas in, pop it, reattach the gas disconnect, cycle, rinse, repeat. When the keg is in its happy place, close the tap. He's talking the CO2 tap to the keg. Find the keg that requires the next higher level of CO2. Repeat steps 4 to 6 until all the kegs are pressurized. And 9, very important, your beers have not only lost pressure, but carbonation. Carbonation takes time or other methods. What I recommend is repeating steps 1 to 8 every 2 days until none of your beers suck CO2 when pressurized. So, in other words, just to kind of boil it down, what Yako is recommending is basically he has individual gas lines or individual gas valves to each of the kegs. They're not pressure regulator valves. They're literally on-off type valves. And so...
right, yeah, I've got the same
and so
thing.
Basically, close them all down, figure out which one requires the lowest amount of CO2, hit that with gas, let that sit, shut off that gas, find the next one, dial in your pressure, hit that one with gas, and do that periodically so that you can get your keg's carbonation levels back up to spec. In other words, what Yaku is recommending here is, hey, pay attention. Don't let your beer just sit, like some of us might do.
Yeah, really, I would say that's my method. I guess it's about time to wrap things up.
Yeah,
huh?
absolutely. So, all right, here's our question of the week. Would you ever be crazy enough to open a homebrew shop / nanobrewery? If so,
No.
Well, we know you. You and I are the last two homebrewers standing. So if you're not crazy enough to do that, but you really want to have a chance to experience that sort of thing, by all means, go visit our friends at Ferment, Drink, Repeat in San Francisco. And just remember, we are getting back to our regular experimentation calendar, which also means that we need Igors to help us do our experiments. So if you'd like to join the Igor Corps, win some fancy prizes, and get praise, laud, and love, just email us at igor@experimentalbrew.com. And don't forget to help us support our charity.
Right, and just in the way of what's coming up in the next few episodes, I've been spending a lot of time on the road, so we'll be having an interview with Russell Everett at Bainbridge Island Brewing, like I mentioned, and I just got back from a killer trip to Milwaukee to talk to the Milwaukee Beer Barons, and had a chance to interview Mino Choi, the only person I know who has ever gotten several perfect 50s on score sheets, and Justin Abrahamian, an award-winning chef who has opened up a brewery and just opening up a new brew pub in Milwaukee. So there's some interesting stuff coming down the road.
That's somebody who's insane. Hi, I have a restaurant and a brew pub and a brewery. Good Lord.
And wait till you hear his story about how the state of Wisconsin told him to go to Chicago to open up a brewery.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to the Experimental Brewing Podcast. You can catch all of our latest adventures and writings by going to our website, experimentalbrew.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, where we're at Experimental Brew. We're on Facebook. Drew tells me we're on Instagram, so I guess I'm going to have to check that out someday. Or whatever else we can find. I'll be hanging out on a lot of the beer discussion forums. If you want to ask us a question or suggest topics, recipes, experiments, or just rant and rave, you can email us at podcast@experimentalbrew.com. Or if you want to contact each one of us individually, I'm Denny at experimentalbrew.com, and he's Drew at experimentalbrew.com.
And hey, don't forget to check out our latest adventures. We have a YouTube channel now, where right now we're catching up on old episodes of the podcast, but we're also going to be throwing up some fun, random, weirdo content up there. So go check out Experimental Brewing on YouTube.
Really, weirdo content. Who would have thought that coming from us? Okay, everybody. I just want to say before we go, remember to always brew experimentally.
Or brew wacky.
And we'll see you on the next episode of Experimental Brewing.